I stood at the entrance of the Riverside Country Club ballroom, wearing my best Navy suit, holding an envelope with $5,000 cash inside. My daughter Courtney's wedding reception was in full swing behind those doors. I'd already paid $75,000 for half this wedding. Now I was here to celebrate with her. But when Courtney spotted me through the glass, her face changed. She stormed toward me in her white gown, and what she said next stopped my heart. "Dad, you weren't invited. You need to leave. Now." 200 guests turned to stare. My ex-wife Linda smirked from across the room. The shock hit me like a physical blow. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. Around me, people were pulling out phones, recording this moment. My daughter, the little girl I'd raised for 24 years, was telling me to leave her wedding. A wedding I'd paid for half of, $75,000 from my own pocket, because she'd asked me to help make her day special. "Courtney, sweetheart," I managed to say, my voice shaking. "There must be some misunderstanding. I'm not leaving." Her new husband Kyle stepped forward. He was 32, same age as Courtney, and came from money, old money. The Hutchins family owned half the commercial real estate in our county. Kyle looked at me with pure contempt. "You heard her, old man. Get out before we call security." The guests were whispering now. I could hear fragments of conversations. "That's her father? How awful. Poor Courtney." Linda, my ex-wife, was standing near the wedding cake with her new husband Gerald, and she was actually smiling, enjoying my humiliation. My hand went to my phone. I pulled it out and made a call. The line picked up immediately. "Marcus, I need you in the main ballroom. Now, bring the team." Kyle laughed. It was a cruel sound. "See? They're coming to escort you out. This is pathetic." 30 seconds later, 4 security guards in black suits appeared at the ballroom entrance. They were my guards, my employees. Marcus, my head of security for 15 years, led them. He looked at me, waiting for instructions. I turned to face Courtney and Kyle. I kept my voice calm, though my heart was hammering. "Courtney, Kyle, everyone here needs to understand something. This isn't just any country club. I own the Riverside Country Club. I've owned it for 23 years. These are my security guards, my employees, and you all have exactly 2 minutes to gather your things and leave my property." The ballroom erupted. Gasps, shouts, confusion. Courtney's face went pale, but Kyle didn't look surprised. He looked prepared, and that's when I knew something was very wrong. Courtney reached into her white clutch purse and pulled out a folded document. Her hands weren't shaking. "Actually, Dad, you need to leave. This is a restraining order filed yesterday. You're legally required to stay 500 feet away from me. You're in violation right now." Kyle's family attorney had it expedited through the court. She handed the paper to me. I unfolded it with trembling fingers. It was real. Official court seal. Notarized. Dated the day before. The document claimed I had been harassing and threatening Courtney for months, that she feared for her safety, that I had made violent threats about disrupting the wedding. None of it was true. Not one word. I hadn't threatened anyone. I'd barely spoken to Courtney in the 3 months since she'd gotten engaged. She'd been distant, but I'd assumed she was just busy with wedding planning. Kyle pulled out his phone, already dialing. "I'm calling the police right now. You're violating a restraining order, Arthur. That's a criminal offense. You'll be arrested at your own club." How does that sound? My mind raced. If the police came and saw that restraining order, they'd have to arrest me. It didn't matter that the allegations were lies. The document was legal. I'd be handcuffed in front of 200 people. My reputation in this community, built over 40 years, would be destroyed in minutes. Marcus stepped close to me and whispered, "Boss, what do you want me to do? I can stall the cops for a few minutes, but that restraining order looks legitimate. If you're here when they arrive, you're getting arrested." I looked at my daughter. Her eyes were hard, cold. This wasn't the Courtney I knew. Something had changed her, or someone had. "Marcus," I said quietly, "let the wedding continue. Don't interfere. Document everything that happens tonight, every person who attends, everything they do. But I'm leaving." I couldn't believe I was saying it. This was my property, my business, But I had no choice. If I stayed, I'd be arrested. If I was arrested, the story would be all over the news by morning. Local businessmen arrested at daughter's wedding for violating restraining order. Nobody would care about my side of the story. I turned to leave. Courtney called after me, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "And Dad, we'll be discussing the future ownership of this club very soon. My lawyers will be in touch." I stopped walking, turned back. "What does that mean?" Kyle put his arm around Courtney. "It means we know this club is worth a lot of money. And we know you built it during Courtney's childhood. That makes it partially hers. We'll be claiming what's rightfully owed." I walked out of my own club, out into the parking lot, alone. Behind me, I could hear music starting up again. The wedding continued. They were celebrating, and I was standing in a parking lot, holding a $5,000 wedding gift I'd never get to give, trying to understand how my life had just collapsed. What I didn't know yet was that this was only the beginning. The wedding humiliation was just the opening move in a much bigger game, and I was the target. 3 days later, I sat in the office of Roger Whitman, my attorney for the past 20 years. I'd brought the restraining order with me, along with printed copies of every text message and email I'd ever sent to Courtney. I needed Roger to see that I'd never threatened her, never harassed her, never done anything to justify a restraining order. Roger was 65, a careful man who'd handled my business contracts, my divorce from Linda, everything legal in my life. He read through the restraining order slowly, his face grave. When he finished, he looked up at me. "Arthur, this is more serious than you realize. There are affidavits here from 3 witnesses claiming you made threats. One is from Linda, your ex-wife. One is from Courtney's childhood therapist, Dr. Patricia Holden, and one is from your business partner, Frank." The room seemed to tilt. "Frank? Frank signed something saying I'm dangerous? That's impossible. We've been partners for 12 years. We're friends." Roger slid another document across his desk. "There's more. Courtney filed a civil lawsuit against you yesterday. She's claiming emotional damages from childhood. The lawsuit alleges you were abusive, controlling, and psychologically harmful during her upbringing. She's suing for $2.5 million in damages." I couldn't breathe. Abusive? Roger, I never laid a hand on Courtney. Never. I was strict about homework and curfews, sure. But abusive? That's insane. "Arthur, look at this." Roger showed me another stack of papers. "These are therapy session notes from when Courtney was 14 years old. They're from Dr. Patricia Holden. The notes describe sessions where Courtney allegedly expressed fear of you, talked about emotional manipulation, described walking on eggshells around your temper. I remembered Courtney seeing Dr. Holden. It was during the divorce, 15 years ago. Courtney had gone to maybe 5 or 6 sessions. Linda had insisted on it, said Courtney needed someone to talk to about the family changes. But Courtney had never complained about me. She'd never seemed afraid. We'd had a good relationship, even through the divorce. "Roger, those notes have to be taken out of context or fabricated. Courtney saw that therapist maybe 6 times 15 years ago. She never said anything about being afraid of me." Roger's expression was grim. "The notes are dated and signed by Dr. Holden. She's provided a sworn statement confirming the sessions and her professional observations. Arthur, these documents look legitimate. A jury would take them seriously." He slid one more document across the desk. "The lawsuit also names the Riverside Country Club as an asset that should be transferred to Courtney as restitution for your alleged abuse. They're arguing that your business was built during her childhood, and therefore she deserves ownership as compensation for her suffering." My voice came out as a whisper. "They want my club." "They want your club," Roger confirmed. "This isn't just about money, Arthur. This is about taking everything you've built." I left Roger's office in a daze and drove straight to the Riverside Country Club. I needed to talk to Frank. There had to be an explanation. Frank wouldn't betray me. We'd built this business together 12 years ago when Frank bought in as a partner. We'd weathered recessions, competition, tough years. We were a team. But when I walked into the club, Frank was already in my office. He wasn't alone. He had a lawyer with him, a sharp-faced man in an expensive suit I didn't recognize. "Arthur," Frank said. He didn't stand up. Didn't look happy to see me. "We need to talk." "Frank, what's going on?" "Roger showed me a restraining order. You signed an affidavit saying I'm threatening and unstable. Why would you do that?" Frank glanced at his lawyer, who nodded. "Arthur, I'm buying you out. I'm offering $800,000 for your half of the club. That's more than fair given the circumstances." I stared at him. "The club is worth at least $4 million. My half is worth $2 million. Minimum. And why would I sell to you? This is my business." The lawyer spoke up. His voice was cold, professional. "Because Mr. Brennan here has evidence of financial irregularities in your management of the club, possible embezzlement. He's prepared to report these irregularities to the authorities unless you accept this buyout and walk away quietly. You have 48 hours to decide." Embezzlement? I felt like I was in a nightmare. I've never stolen a dime from this business. "Frank, you know that. You see the books every month." Frank wouldn't meet my eyes. "I've found discrepancies, Arthur. Payments that don't match invoices. Cash withdrawals that aren't documented. Either you sell to me, or I go to the police. Your choice." I stood there, unable to process what was happening. My business partner of 12 years was threatening me, trying to steal my business, using fabricated evidence of crimes I'd never committed. "Frank, who got to you? Who's paying you to do this?" Frank stood up. His lawyer put a hand on his arm, a warning. But Frank looked at me for a long moment. For just a second, I saw guilt in his eyes. Then it was gone. "You have 48 hours, Arthur. Take the deal." They walked out, leaving me standing in my own office, my world crumbling around me. The next morning, I went to my bank to make sure my accounts were secure. I needed to protect what I had left. I'd been banking at First National for 30 years. The manager, Gloria, had handled my accounts since I'd opened them. Gloria looked uncomfortable when I asked to review my accounts. "Mr. Harrison, I have to inform you that we received a court order this morning. Your accounts have been frozen pending the outcome of the civil lawsuit. It's standard procedure in cases involving financial restitution claims. My business accounts held $340,000. My personal savings held $180,000. Every penny I had was frozen, inaccessible. Gloria, I can't access my own money. How am I supposed to live? How am I supposed to pay for legal defense?" She looked genuinely sorry. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Harrison. My hands are tied. It's a court order. Until the lawsuit is resolved, the accounts remain frozen." I walked out of the bank in a daze. In 72 hours, I'd been publicly humiliated at my daughter's wedding, hit with a restraining order, sued for $2.5 million, threatened by my business partner, and had all my money frozen. And I had no idea how to fight back. 1 week later, I stood in family court for the restraining order hearing. Roger had withdrawn from my case. He'd called me 2 days after our meeting and said his firm had a conflict of interest and couldn't represent me. I suspected someone had pressured him, but he wouldn't say who. Without access to my frozen accounts, I couldn't afford another lawyer. I was representing myself. The courtroom was small, sterile. The judge was a woman in her 50s named Judge Catherine Morrison. She looked tired. Courtney sat at the other table with her attorney, Douglas Green. Green was in his 40s, expensive suit, confident manner, the kind of lawyer who cost $500 an hour. Linda, my ex-wife, was called as the first witness. She wore a conservative dress and had tears in her eyes as she took the stand. She testified about our marriage, painting me as controlling and emotionally abusive. She said I had angry outbursts, that she'd walked on eggshells for years, that divorcing me was the bravest thing she'd ever done. None of it was true. Our marriage had fallen apart because Linda had an affair with Gerald, her current husband. I'd found out, confronted her, and she'd left. But now she was rewriting history, making herself the victim and me the villain. "Mrs. Wellington," Douglas Green said gently, "did you witness Mr. Harrison's behavior toward your daughter Courtney during the marriage?" Linda nodded, dabbing her eyes. He was so hard on her. Nothing she did was ever good enough. She was terrified of disappointing him. I tried to protect her, but Arthur had all the power in that house. I wanted to object, to scream that she was lying, but I didn't know the proper legal procedures. I stayed silent, helpless. Courtney testified next. She cried on the stand, describing a childhood of fear and control. She said I'd monitored her every move, criticized her constantly, made her feel worthless. She said the wedding was supposed to be her fresh start, free from my control, but I'd tried to ruin it by showing up uninvited. I paid for half that wedding, I said, unable to stop myself. Judge Morrison looked at me sharply. Mr. Harrison, you'll have your chance to speak. Please remain silent. Dr. Patricia Holden, the therapist, testified via video conference. She spoke about her sessions with Courtney 15 years ago, saying Courtney had displayed classic signs of emotional abuse. She'd been anxious, fearful of making mistakes, desperate for approval. Dr. Holden said these were clear indicators of an abusive home environment. When it was finally my turn to speak, I tried to explain. Your Honor, none of this is true. I was a strict father, yes. I had rules about grades and curfews, but I never abused Courtney. I loved her. I still love her. These allegations are fabricated. Do you have any evidence to support your claim? Judge Morrison asked. Any witnesses who can testify to your character? I realized with sinking horror that I had no one. Patricia, my girlfriend of 3 years, had broken up with me after Courtney called her with the abuse allegations. My brother Thomas believed Linda's version of events. My friends from the club had distanced themselves after the wedding incident made the local news. Frank had turned against me. Even Marcus, my loyal head of security, couldn't testify about what happened 15 years ago in my home. No, Your Honor, I said quietly. I don't have witnesses. Judge Morrison extended the restraining order for 6 months and added conditions. I couldn't contact Courtney in any way. I couldn't go within 500 feet of her home. I couldn't discuss her publicly or on social media. As I left the courthouse, a reporter from the local online news site approached me. Mr. Harrison, do you have any comment on your daughter's allegations? I said nothing and walked to my car. But 2 days later, the article appeared online. Local business owner accused of child abuse. Faces lawsuit from daughter. The article included a photo of Courtney looking vulnerable and sad. It quoted Kyle's statement about protecting his wife from further harm. It included Linda's comments about finally speaking the truth about my past. My phone exploded with messages. Old friends asking if the allegations were true. Club members saying they were canceling their memberships. Business associates distancing themselves, not wanting to be connected to someone accused of child abuse. I called Patricia, hoping she'd listen now that we'd had time apart. She answered on the 4th ring. Arthur, I can't talk to you. Courtney called me again yesterday. She was crying. She told me more details about what you did to her. Arthur, I think you need professional help. Please don't call me again. She hung up. I sat in my car in the courthouse parking lot, completely alone. That week, I discovered that Kyle's father was Warren Hutchins, one of the biggest real estate developers in the state. Warren had been quietly buying properties around my club for the past year. The Riverside Country Club sat on prime waterfront land worth millions in development potential. A letter arrived from Warren's development company, Hutchins Properties. They were offering $1.5 million for the entire club property. The property was worth at least $4 million. The letter had a subtle threat woven into the professional language. We hope to resolve this matter amicably. Continued resistance may result in additional legal and regulatory challenges. I refused the offer immediately. 3 days later, the county health department showed up for a surprise inspection. They found violations I'd never seen before. Improper food storage, inadequate refrigeration temperatures, pest control issues. Some of the violations seemed planted. I'd just had an inspection 6 months ago and passed with perfect marks. The fine was $85,000. I had 30 days to make corrections or the club would be shut down. Then the fire marshal arrived. He found electrical code violations throughout the building. The wiring needed to be brought up to current standards. The cost, $60,000. Another 30-day deadline. I realized Warren Hutchins had connections with city officials. He was using bureaucratic pressure to force me to sell. If I couldn't pay the fines and make the repairs, my club would be closed. and I couldn't pay because my accounts were frozen. The stress was unbearable. I wasn't sleeping. I'd lost 15 pounds. My chest hurt constantly. One morning, I woke up with pain radiating down my left arm. I drove myself to the emergency room, terrified I was having a heart attack. The ER doctor ran tests. Not a heart attack, but severe stress-induced angina. My blood pressure was dangerously high, 190/110. The doctor was blunt. "Mr. Harrison, you're at serious risk for stroke or cardiac arrest. You need to reduce stress immediately, or this could kill you." They prescribed medications, but I had no insurance. My coverage through the club had lapsed when I couldn't pay the premium. The medications cost $340 per month. The hospital social worker helped me apply for assistance, but the process was humiliating. My brother Thomas called that night. I hoped for support. Instead, Arthur, Linda told me everything. The abuse, the control, everything. I can't believe I didn't see it back then. "You need help. Serious psychological help. Don't call me until you've dealt with your issues." He hung up before I could respond. My own brother believed the lies. I was legally isolated from my daughter, sued for millions, betrayed by my business partner, abandoned by my girlfriend, cut off from my brother, under regulatory attack, in a health crisis, financially frozen, and my business was about to be shut down. I'd never felt more alone in my life. 2 weeks later, I'd scraped together $5,000 by selling my car. I took the bus everywhere now, or sometimes Marcus let me borrow his old pickup truck. I needed that $5,000 to pay Roger Whitman a partial retainer so he'd continue as my lawyer for the civil lawsuit. The preliminary hearing was scheduled, and I couldn't face it alone again. I met Roger at his office. He looked uncomfortable the moment I walked in. That should have warned me. "Arthur, sit down. We need to talk." Saturday, Roger slid a document across his desk. "Courtney's legal team is offering a settlement. You sign over your half of the club to Frank for $600,000. You publicly apologize to Courtney for the abuse she suffered. They dropped the lawsuit. It's over." $600,000? I couldn't believe it. "Roger, my half is worth $2 million, and I'm innocent. Why would I apologize for abuse I never committed?" Roger leaned back in his chair. He looked tired, defeated. "Arthur, I'm going to be honest with you. You can't win this case. Kyle's family has unlimited resources. The evidence against you is substantial. The therapy notes, the witness statements, the financial irregularities Frank is alleging. A jury will side with the daughter. They always do. Even if you win eventually, you'll be bankrupted by legal fees. This settlement lets you walk away with something." "Something?" My voice rose. "It's a fraction of what I'm owed, and it requires me to admit to crimes I didn't commit." "Roger, I thought you believed me." Roger was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Arthur, there's something else I need to tell you. Warren Hutchins is a major client of my law firm. He brings in over $200,000 a year in legal fees. The senior partners have made it very clear that I need to resolve your case quietly and quickly. They don't want any conflict with Warren's interests." I felt like I'd been punched. "You're my lawyer. You're supposed to represent me, not Warren Hutchins." "I am representing you," Roger said. "I'm telling you the reality of your situation. You can't afford to fight this. You don't have the resources. You don't have witnesses. You don't have evidence. You have 48 hours to accept the settlement. If you refuse, I'm withdrawing from your case. You'll be on your own." He stood up. The meeting was over. I sat there, unable to move. My own lawyer was abandoning me because his firm made more money from my enemy than from me. The next day was the preliminary hearing for the civil lawsuit. I showed up alone, no attorney. The courtroom was bigger this time, more formal. Judge Harold Chen presided. He was in his 60s, stern-looking. Courtney's attorney, Douglas Green, presented his case. He had 3 ring binders full of evidence: the therapy notes, witness affidavits, financial documents showing alleged irregularities in my management of the club. He spoke smoothly, confidently, painting a picture of a controlling, abusive father who'd psychologically damaged his daughter and then mismanaged a business built partially on family assets. When it was my turn, I tried to explain that the allegations were false, that I'd never abused Courtney, that the financial records were being misrepresented. But I had no evidence, no documents, no prepared arguments. I sounded desperate and unprepared. Judge Chen looked at me with something like pity. "Mr. Harrison, do you have any evidence to refute these claims? Any witnesses who can testify to your character and parenting?" I thought about it. Patricia wouldn't speak to me. Thomas believed Linda. Frank was against me. My other friends had abandoned me after the media coverage. Marcus could testify that I was a fair boss, but he knew nothing about my relationship with Courtney as a child. "No, Your Honor," I admitted. "I don't have witnesses." Judge Chen made his ruling. "The case will proceed to trial. Given the complexity and the amount of damages claimed, trial date is set for 8 months from now. Mr. Harrison, I strongly advise you to obtain legal counsel. Representing yourself in a case of this magnitude is not advisable." 8 months. I had to survive 8 more months of this nightmare. I returned to the club after the hearing to find a notice posted on the front door. "Closed by order of the County Health Department, pending resolution of health code violations." My club was shut down. The health department had closed me for the violations found in their inspection. I couldn't operate, couldn't generate revenue, couldn't pay employees. I walked inside. Marcus was packing up his desk. He looked up when I entered, and I saw genuine regret in his eyes. "Boss, I'm so sorry. With the club closed, I've got to find other work. I have 3 kids. My wife is already on me about the mortgage. I can't wait around hoping this gets resolved." I understand, Marcus. And I did. He had a family to support. But losing Marcus felt like losing my last ally. Frank appeared from the back office, carrying a briefcase. He looked satisfied. "Arthur, the closure makes this very simple. The business is generating 0 revenue. I'm filing for dissolution of our partnership based on your mismanagement. You'll get nothing. Or you can accept my offer. 500,000 for your half." But the offer expires in 72 hours. The offer had dropped again, from 800,000 to 600,000 in the settlement offer, and now down to 500,000 from Frank. They knew I was desperate. They were squeezing. "I need time to think," I said. Frank shrugged. 72 hours. After that, you're out completely. I was living off the money from selling my car, but it was running out fast. I couldn't pay rent on my condo. The landlord gave me an eviction notice. I had 7 days to leave. I packed my belongings into 2 large duffel bags and moved into a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. The room was small, smelled like cigarettes, and cost $50 a night. I could afford maybe 3 weeks there. My heart medications cost $340 per month. I couldn't afford them. I started rationing pills, taking them every other day instead of daily. My chest pains got worse. My blood pressure climbed again, but I had no choice. I tried to get a loan from my bank. Gloria, the manager, looked genuinely sad as she explained that with the lawsuit pending, the media coverage of abuse allegations, and my frozen assets, no bank would loan me money. My credit cards were maxed out from paying Roger's initial legal fees. One afternoon, desperate for help, I went to a free legal aid clinic downtown. The waiting room was full of people in worse situations than mine. Immigrants facing deportation, mothers fighting for custody, elderly people dealing with evictions. I waited 3 hours to see an attorney. She was a young woman named Beth, probably just out of law school. She reviewed my case, reading through the documents I'd brought. She was sympathetic, but realistic. "Mr. Harrison, cases like yours require extensive resources, expert witnesses, private investigators, document analysis. We typically handle straightforward divorces and landlord-tenant disputes. You need a major firm with investigative capabilities. I'm so sorry, but we can't help you." I walked out into the late afternoon sun, feeling completely defeated. I was 68 years old, broken, abandoned, and alone. That night, sitting in my motel room, I thought about giving up entirely, just accepting Frank's offer, signing away everything, and disappearing. Maybe moving to another state, starting over somehow. But I was too old to start over, too tired, too broken. I thought about Emma, the freelance journalist's brother who'd lost his business to Warren Hutchins and taken his own life. I understood why he'd done it. When everything is taken from you, when everyone believes lies about you, when you're alone and in pain with no hope, that dark option starts to seem reasonable. But I wasn't there yet. Not quite. Some stubborn part of me refused to quit. Not yet. 1 month later, I accepted Frank's offer. I had no choice. I was out of money, out of options, out of hope. We met in a lawyer's office, a neutral attorney who handled the transaction. I signed the papers transferring my ownership stake in the Riverside Country Club to Frank for $500,000. 23 years of work, reduced to a number on a page. But when the lawyer calculated the final amount I'd receive, my stomach dropped. There were deductions. Legal fees owed to Roger Whitman, $85,000. IRS back taxes that Frank's accountant had discovered, $42,000. Other business debts and obligations, $96,000. After all deductions, I received a check for $87,000. 23 years of building a business, $87,000. Frank shook my hand as we left the office. His grip was firm, his expression sympathetic. "Arthur, I hope you can move on now. Start fresh. Put all this behind you." I said nothing. What could I say? The restraining order was still in effect. The lawsuit was still active. Courtney hadn't dropped it despite the club sale. They'd lied about that too. My life was still a nightmare. But now, I no longer had a business. 3 days later, I fainted in my motel room. I woke up on the floor, my head bleeding from where I'd hit the nightstand. I had no memory of falling. I managed to call for an ambulance. The hospital kept me for 3 days. Dangerously high blood pressure, severe arrhythmia, signs of heart failure. The cardiologist was blunt. "Mr. Harrison, you've had what we call a cardiac event. Not a full heart attack, but a serious warning. Your body is shutting down from stress. The next event could kill you. You need rest, proper medication, and immediate stress reduction." The hospital bill was $31,000. I had no insurance. The billing department set up a payment plan that would take years to pay off. I signed the papers in a daze. When I was discharged, I had nowhere to go. The motel had rented my room to someone else. My belongings were in storage, but I was 3 months behind on the storage fees and they'd auctioned everything off. Marcus let me sleep on a cot in the security office at his new job, a hospital on the other side of town. It was a kindness I'd never forget, but I could only stay a few nights. He'd lose his job if his supervisor found out. I was homeless. 68 years old, sleeping on a cot in a security office, showering at a cheap gym I'd gotten a basic membership to. One afternoon, sitting in the public library because it was warm and free and had bathrooms, I started researching Warren Hutchins online. I'd lost everything, but I needed to understand who had destroyed me. I found articles about Warren's development projects. Multiple times over the past decade, he'd acquired valuable properties through aggressive tactics. There were hints of lawsuits, of owners who felt they'd been cheated, of questionable business practices. Then I found something interesting, a sealed court case from 7 years ago. A property owner named Gerald Simmons had sued Warren for conspiracy to defraud. The case had been settled confidentially, terms undisclosed, but the case number was public record. I kept digging. Warren had a pattern. He identified valuable properties, researched the owner's vulnerabilities, and then systematically destroyed them until they sold cheap. It wasn't just me. It was a business model. I was walking back to the hospital that evening, carrying my few belongings in a backpack, when someone called my name. I turned. A young woman was standing there, maybe 25 years old, carrying a laptop bag. "Mr. Harrison? Arthur Harrison?" I was wary. "Yes. Do I know you?" She introduced herself as Emma Caldwell, a freelance investigative journalist. "I've been researching Warren Hutchins for 6 months. I found your name in property records. I read about your lawsuit with your daughter. Mr. Harrison, I think Warren Hutchins orchestrated the entire thing to steal your property. and I think I can prove it. We sat on a bench in a small park. Emma opened her laptop and showed me what she'd found. For the past 6 months, she'd been investigating Warren Hutchins, following a tip from another property owner who'd been similarly destroyed. She'd uncovered a clear pattern spanning a decade. Warren identified valuable property. He researched the owner's vulnerabilities and family conflicts. He exploited those vulnerabilities through lawsuits, media campaigns, regulatory pressure. The owner was forced to sell cheap. Warren developed the property for massive profit. She had documentation of at least 7 properties Warren had acquired this way. The total value, over $50 million. Warren's actual costs, maybe $15 million. He'd made $35 million by destroying people. Mr. Harrison, look at this. Emma showed me bank records. Your business partner, Frank? He received a payment of $300,000 from a shell company owned by Warren Hutchins. The payment came 2 months before your daughter's wedding. Frank was paid to betray you. I stared at the screen. $300,000. Frank had sold me out for money. Emma showed me more. Douglas Green, Courtney's attorney, had been on Warren's payroll for years. Green specialized in adversarial property acquisition. He was Warren's weapon. She'd obtained emails through a confidential source. The emails showed communication between Warren, Frank, and Douglas Green discussing the Harrison acquisition starting 9 months ago. One email from Warren read, "The daughter is the key. Use the family conflict. Make it personal and public. He'll break." Warren had researched me, found out about my strained relationship with Courtney after the divorce, decided to weaponize my own daughter against me. Emma, how did you get these emails? She smiled slightly. I have sources, people who've been hurt by Warren and want to see him stopped. Mr. Harrison, I have more. Do you want to see it? She showed me text messages between Courtney and Kyle from recent weeks. Messages Emma had obtained through methods she wouldn't explain. In the messages, Courtney expressed guilt and confusion. Kyle, I thought Dad would just sell the club and retire comfortably. Your father said it was worth maybe $500,000 and Dad would be fine. But I saw online the property sold to your dad for $3.8 million. Kyle, did we take advantage of my father? Kyle's response, baby, don't worry about it. Your dad was never a good person. My father explained everything. Your dad had it coming. I read the messages 3 times. Courtney didn't know. She'd been manipulated. Warren and Kyle had convinced her I was abusive, playing on normal father-daughter tensions from the divorce. They'd told her the club wasn't worth much. She thought she was standing up to an abusive father, not helping to steal a $4 million property. Emma, why are you helping me? Her expression changed. Sadness filled her eyes. My brother, Daniel, lost his business to Warren Hutchins 4 years ago. Same pattern, same tactics. My brother couldn't handle losing everything. He took his own life 6 months after Warren destroyed him. Mr. Harrison, I'm doing this for Daniel, and for every person Warren has destroyed. Will you help me stop him? I looked at this young woman who'd lost her brother, who was fighting for justice not just for me, but for everyone Warren had hurt. And I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Purpose. What do you need me to do? Emma laid out everything she had. Bank records showing Frank's payoff from Warren. Emails between Warren, Douglas Green, and Frank discussing the acquisition strategy. Documentation of Warren's pattern across multiple properties. Proof that the health department violations at my club had been requested by Warren's company through political connections. Evidence that Dr. Patricia Holden had been paid $25,000 and coached on her testimony. Records showing Linda, my ex-wife, had received $50,000 from one of Warren's shell companies. She'd been bribed to provide damaging testimony about abuse that never happened. Emma, this is incredible. But what can we do with it? I'm broke. I have no lawyer. Warren has unlimited resources. Emma closed her laptop. We go to the FBI. Warren's shell companies cross state lines. That makes this federal wire fraud, conspiracy, and possibly racketeering. I've been working with an FBI agent for the past 2 months. She's been building a case against Warren for other matters. Your case might be the key to a larger prosecution. The next day, Emma took me to meet FBI agent Karen Torres. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, professional. We met in a small office in the federal building downtown. I told her my story from beginning to end. Agent Torres listened without interrupting, taking notes. When I finished, she reviewed Emma's evidence carefully. "Mr. Harrison, this is substantial. We've had Warren Hutchins on our radar for years, but we've never had enough evidence to build a case. Most of his victims were too broken to cooperate, or they'd signed confidentiality agreements. Your case, combined with Emma's documentation, gives us what we need." "What do you need from me?" I asked. Agent Torres leaned forward. "I need you to wear a wire and get Frank to talk. We need him on record, admitting to the conspiracy. Can you do that?" Fear shot through me. Frank won't talk to me. He already got what he wanted. Why would he meet with me? "Because we're going to give him a reason to worry," Agent Torres said. "We'll create a scenario where you have something he needs, and we'll record him admitting to everything." 2 days later, I called Frank. My hands were shaking as I dialed. Agent Torres had coached me on exactly what to say. "Frank, it's Arthur. I need to meet with you. It's important." Frank was suspicious. "Arthur, we have nothing to talk about. The deal is done." "Frank, I found documentation, records from the club's old accounting system, evidence of financial irregularities that could implicate you in IRS fraud. I think we should talk before I decide what to do with these records." There was a long silence. Then, "What kind of records?" "Not over the phone. Meet me tomorrow. The diner on Maple Street. Noon." Frank agreed. The next day, I sat in a booth at the back of the diner, wearing a wire under my shirt. Agent Torres and her team were in a van outside, listening. I was terrified. If Frank suspected anything, this was over. Frank arrived 10 minutes late. He slid into the booth across from me, looking wary. "What records are you talking about, Arthur?" I'd rehearsed this with Agent Torres. "Old financial records from before you bought in. Payments that don't match invoices. If the IRS looks at them, you'll have problems. I'm willing to make them disappear, but I need something from you." "How much?" "50,000. Frank laughed. "You're trying to blackmail me?" "Arthur, that's illegal. And I don't think you have anything." I pulled out a folder with fake documents Agent Torres had prepared. They looked convincing. Frank glanced at them, and I saw doubt cross his face. "Frank, we both know you didn't come up with the idea to push me out on your own. Who approached you? How much did they pay you?" Frank took a long drink of his water. He was thinking, calculating. Finally, he leaned back. "Arthur, you never understood how business really works. Warren Hutchins approached me over a year ago. He showed me how much that property was really worth. Said the land alone was worth $4 million if it was rezoned for high-rise development. He offered me $1.2 million to help push you out. All I had to do was turn on you at the right time, sign some statements about financial irregularities, and wait. Easiest money I ever made." My stomach churned, but I kept my face neutral. "What about Courtney? How did Warren get to her?" Frank seemed almost proud now, enjoying explaining how clever the scheme was. "Warren's son Kyle was already dating your daughter. Perfect setup. They convinced Courtney you were the problem. Played up normal father-daughter stuff from the divorce. Warren's lawyer, Green, handled the legal side. Green got your ex-wife involved too, paid her off. It was like a military operation. You never had a chance, Arthur. And the restraining order? The therapy notes?" Frank shrugged. "All planned. Warren has connections everywhere. He got the therapist to cooperate with some cash, got Linda to lie about abuse through your whole marriage, even got your brother to turn on you through Linda. Warren is a genius at finding pressure points and exploiting them. You were just another mark. He's done this at least a dozen times that I know of." I forced myself to keep talking naturally. "So the whole thing was a setup from the beginning." "From the beginning," Frank confirmed. "The wedding rejection was theater. Maximum public humiliation to break you psychologically. Then the legal attacks to drain you financially. Then the regulatory pressure to force the sale. Every step planned months in advance. Warren said you'd fold in 3 to 6 months. You actually lasted almost 5. I'm almost impressed." He finished his water and stood up. But Arthur, you don't actually have any real records that matter, do you? You're bluffing. And even if you weren't, who would believe you now? You're a broken man with no credibility. Good luck with your life. He walked out of the diner. I sat there, the wire still recording, feeling sick. Agent Torres came in 2 minutes later and sat across from me. Mr. Harrison, you did perfect. We got everything. Frank just confessed to conspiracy to commit fraud, and he implicated Warren Hutchins directly. That's enough for arrests. 3 days later, the FBI raided Warren Hutchins's offices and home simultaneously. They arrested Warren, Douglas Green, and Frank. The charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, racketeering, witness tampering, and bribery. The evidence was overwhelming. Frank's recorded confession, Emma's emails and financial records, the pattern of similar crimes against other property owners spanning a decade. Emma published her investigative article the same day in a major national newspaper. How a development mogul systematically destroyed property owners for profit. The Arthur Harrison story. The article went viral immediately. Within 24 hours, it had been shared hundreds of thousands of times on social media. Major news networks picked it up. Warren Hutchins became a national symbol of corporate greed and corruption. My phone, which Emma had gotten me, started ringing constantly. The first call was from my brother Thomas. Arthur, I just read the article. I'm so sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry. Linda lied to all of us. Can you ever forgive me? Then Patricia, my ex-girlfriend. Arthur, I saw the news. I'm horrified at myself for not believing you. Please, can we talk? Marcus. Boss, I never doubted you. Come stay with my family. We have a guest room. You're not living on the streets anymore. Messages flooded in from former club members, business associates, old friends. Everyone who'd abandoned me now understood the truth. But the call that mattered most came 3 days after the arrests. Dad, it was Courtney. She was crying. Daddy, it's me. Please, I need to see you. Please. We met at a park the next afternoon. Courtney sat on a bench, and when I arrived, she stood up. She looked devastated. Her eyes were red from crying. Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I destroyed your life. I believed Kyle and his father. They told me you were dangerous, that you'd controlled me my whole childhood, that the club was only worth a few $100,000. They made me believe you were a monster, and I was so stupid and naive. I never questioned them. Dad, I helped them steal from you. I helped them destroy you. I sat down next to her. Every instinct wanted to hug her, to comfort her, but the restraining order was still legally in effect. I kept my distance. Courtney, you were manipulated by professionals. Warren Hutchins is a predator. He's destroyed dozens of people. He found your vulnerabilities after the divorce and exploited them. But Dad, I should have known. You raised me. You loved me. How could I think you were abusive? I'm so ashamed of myself, she cried. I wanted desperately to comfort her, but I waited. Finally, I said, Courtney, do you love Kyle? She looked at me with red eyes. I'm divorcing him. His entire family knew what they were doing. They used me as a weapon against you. I can't be married to someone who would do that. Dad, I'll testify. I'll help you get justice. I'll do whatever you need. I just need you to forgive me. Please. I put my arm around my daughter for the first time in over a year. She collapsed against me, sobbing. We sat there for a long time, both of us crying, both of us broken, but together again. The legal resolution came swiftly once the FBI's evidence became public. With Frank's recorded confession, Warren's arrest, and Emma's documentation, my attorneys moved fast. I had a team now. A major law firm had taken my case pro bono after the publicity. They were hungry for justice and good press. The restraining order was vacated within a week. The judge who'd issued it reviewed the evidence of conspiracy and witness tampering, and she looked genuinely angry. She apologized to me directly in court. Mr. Harrison, the system failed you. I'm deeply sorry. The civil lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice. Courtney formally withdrew all allegations and issued a public apology through her own attorney. The statement read, "I was manipulated into making false allegations against my father. Arthur Harrison is a good man and a loving father. I deeply regret the harm I caused him and the lies I was convinced to tell. I filed a massive civil lawsuit against Warren Hutchins, his development company, Douglas Green, Frank, and everyone involved in the conspiracy. The lawsuit sought damages for fraud, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and theft. Warren, facing serious criminal charges and wanting to reduce his potential sentence, agreed to settle quickly. His attorneys approached mine with an offer designed to make the case go away. $6.5 million in damages, full return of the Riverside Country Club property to my ownership, payment of all my legal fees, medical expenses, and costs. A public written apology from Warren, admitting the entire conspiracy. My attorneys advised me to take it. Arthur, if we go to trial, you might win more, but it could take years. Warren is going to prison regardless. This settlement gives you everything back, plus substantial damages. It's a good deal. I accepted. $6.5 million. My club back, my name cleared. Justice. Frank settled separately for $800,000 rather than face trial. His lawyer knew Frank would lose and face even larger damages plus criminal penalties. Linda, my ex-wife, was implicated in the conspiracy for taking $50,000 to provide false testimony. Her attorneys negotiated a deal where she returned the money and issued a written apology admitting she'd lied about abuse. I falsely claimed Arthur Harrison was abusive during our marriage. This was not true. I was paid to make these statements. I deeply regret the harm I caused. 6 months later, I stood in the Riverside Country Club looking around at the restoration work. I'd used part of the settlement money to completely renovate the place. New kitchen, updated electrical systems, fresh paint, modern furniture. It was beautiful. My health had improved dramatically. With proper medication, stress reduction, and renewed purpose, I'd regained the weight I'd lost in a healthy way. My blood pressure was normal. My cardiologist called it a miracle. Arthur, your recovery is remarkable. You've added years to your life by resolving this situation. Patricia was back in my life. We were taking it slow, going to couples counseling to rebuild trust. She'd proven herself during my recovery, visiting me daily, supporting me through the legal battles. Our relationship was different now, stronger, based on trust that had been tested and survived. Marcus came back as head of security, with a significant raise and part ownership in the club. I gave him 10% equity. He'd stood by me when nobody else had. That kind of loyalty deserves reward. Thomas, my brother, visited every week. He brought his wife, and we had family dinners. He apologized constantly until I finally told him to stop. Thomas, we were both victims of a sophisticated con. What matters is we're family again. Most importantly, Courtney was back in my life. She came to the club every Sunday for brunch. We spent hours talking, honestly working through the damage of the past year. She was in therapy, processing her own manipulation and guilt. Her therapist said it would take time, but we were making progress. Dad, she said one Sunday over eggs and coffee, I need you to know something. What I did to you will haunt me for the rest of my life. But you forgave me. That's the most incredible gift anyone has ever given me. Courtney, you're my daughter. I love you. That never changed, even when you were turned against me. Love doesn't give up. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making this up to you. You already have. You're here. That's all I ever wanted. The criminal cases concluded that fall. Warren Hutchins was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for fraud and racketeering. His real estate empire collapsed. Properties were seized, assets frozen. He lost everything. Douglas Green, the attorney, was disbarred and sentenced to 3 years in prison for witness tampering and conspiracy. Frank was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for fraud and conspiracy. I felt no satisfaction seeing him led away in handcuffs, just sadness at how greed had destroyed a 12-year friendship. Kyle, Courtney's ex-husband, wasn't charged criminally. Prosecutors said there wasn't enough direct evidence of his involvement in the conspiracy, but his reputation was destroyed. The divorce cost him everything. His father's crimes tainted the entire family name. Kyle's life fell apart, and I felt no sympathy. 1 year after the wedding that started it all, the club hosted a special event, Arthur Harrison Appreciation Night. 200 people attended. Many were former victims of Warren Hutchins who'd found their own justice through my case. Emma's article had led to a class action lawsuit against Warren's company, and 7 other property owners had received settlements totaling $15 million. I gave a short speech that night. I stood at the front of the ballroom, the same room where Courtney had told me to leave a year before, and I looked out at all these faces. I want to thank everyone who stood by me during the darkest time of my life. Marcus, who gave me a place to sleep when I was homeless. Emma Caldwell, who fought for justice when I had no strength left. Agent Torres and the FBI, who pursued truth. My legal team, who worked tirelessly. Everyone who believed in me. I paused, gathering my thoughts. I also want to thank those who didn't believe me at first, but who had the courage to admit they were wrong and come back. That takes real character. My brother Thomas, my girlfriend Patricia, so many friends who were deceived by lies, but returned when truth emerged. I looked at Courtney sitting at a front table. She was crying, but smiling too. I'm 68 years old. I've built businesses, lost businesses, been betrayed, been vindicated. Here's what I've learned through all of this. Your worth isn't measured by what people think of you in your worst moment. It's measured by how you respond to that moment. Do you give up, or do you fight for truth? The crowd was silent, listening. I almost gave up. I was homeless, broken, my health failing. I thought about ending everything, but something inside me refused to quit. And because I didn't quit, truth came out. Justice happened. Life was restored. That's the lesson. Never give up on truth. Never stop fighting for what's right. Even when it seems impossible. I raised my glass. To truth, to justice, to second chances, and to all of us who refused to stay down. The room erupted in applause and cheers. People stood, clapping, some crying. It was overwhelming. I sat down next to Courtney. She took my hand in both of hers. Dad, I'm so proud of you. I squeezed her hand. Sweetheart, I'm proud of us. We both survived this. We both came back. That's what matters. As the celebration continued around us, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Complete peace. Genuine contentment. I'd been tested in every possible way and survived. My daughter was back. My business was thriving. My health was good. Justice had been served. I thought about Emma's brother, Daniel, who hadn't survived Warren's attacks. I thought about all the people who'd been destroyed by predators like Warren and never recovered. I thought about how close I'd come to being one of them, but I'd survived. And that survival meant something. It meant Warren was in prison. It meant other victims got justice. It meant my story could give hope to others facing impossible situations. I was 68 years old, and I'd just won the fight of my life. Not just the legal battle, but the battle for my soul, my dignity, my family, and my future. At an age when most people are retiring quietly, I'd proven that it's never too late to fight back and win. The music started playing. Couples moved to the dance floor. Patricia came over and extended her hand. Mr. Harrison, may I have this dance? I stood and took her hand. It would be my honor. As we danced, I looked around at my club, my friends, my family. Everything I'd almost lost was restored. Better than before, actually. Tested by fire and proven genuine. Life continues. Justice prevails. And Arthur Harrison, at 68 years old, learned that the human spirit is stronger than any conspiracy, any betrayal, any darkness. Truth always wins. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it requires fighting when you have no strength left. Sometimes it demands standing up when everyone else says to sit down. But truth always wins, and that's a lesson worth remembering. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Have you ever faced a situation where everyone believed lies about you? How did you handle it? Did you fight back, or did you give up? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who's going through something similar right now. If this story moved you, if it gave you hope or made you think about justice and perseverance, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about real people overcoming impossible odds. And share this with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to fight for truth. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for believing that even when everything seems lost, there's still hope. Remember, your worst moment doesn't define you. How you respond to it does. Stay strong. Keep fighting. Never give up on truth. Until next time, this is Arthur Harrison reminding you that justice might be delayed, but it's never denied to those who refuse to quit.